Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, forgive me, it's early, I'm hoarse. I think I'm going to the left forum, and so I have stuff I need to do during the day, so I'm probably going to end up getting there tomorrow. So I'm getting these videos out the way early. I will likely be doing shows at the forum itself if I can find a little space to do a show. So let's start here. I get a tweet from E-Knowledge on Twitter. Thank you, E-Knowledge, for sending this, or Aaron, thank you for sending this. A Hillary supporter once again blaming Jill Stein. Another Hillary supporter blaming Jill Stein. In this case, saying Jill Stein robbed people blind because they were trying to do the recount and figure out who actually won that area. This comes across to me in an odd way, like Republicans and Tories, when something goes wrong in the society itself, to blame immigrants. We need to blame the people who are at the least of the economic scale. Jill Stein got like 1% of the vote. I understand that your candidate lost. And I understand it hurts. It burns. You were told, even in your own article, Stephen wrote an article essentially saying people were suckers for, I strongly suspect he would say voting for Jill Stein, but in this case saying for even giving money to Jill Stein's election or her campaign to check the vote total in those states. Blissfully unaware of the fact, apparently, that Hillary Clinton did sign on to Jill Stein's finding the recount. And if Hillary Clinton was that real candidate with the billions of dollars, with the $1 billion she raised, looked like she would have added more of a weight to the recount thing. She could have paid the recount thing all by herself if she was that curious about whether or not she won those states. But whatever. We need to blame Stein. It's Stein's fault. Stein with 1% of the vote is at fault. Here's the thing. It is not Stein's responsibility to get your candidate elected. Hillary Clinton is in the Democratic Party. Jill Stein is in the Green Party. These seems like two different parties to me. Why aren't you making this saying that Donald Trump was the reason that Hillary Clinton didn't get elected? Because that would be more accurate and more true. That woman just lost. That woman just failed. She failed magnificently. She failed at a level that is difficult for human beings to comprehend, which maybe is the reason why all of these Hillary supporters are still raw over this. They can't process it. Their candidate lost to reality show hosts. Failed miserably. Failed spectacularly. I would imagine it burns. I would imagine it hurts. I would imagine that all of the pain and angst and frustration that the person feels looking at the clown in the presidency hurts a little bit more when they realize that clown beat the stuffing out of their candidate. The public preferred that clown over their most experienced candidate in the history of candidates. And in their anger and pissed offness, they realize that the problem here is democracy. The problem is representative government. That's the problem with the situation. Of all the issues that you could point to, that woman had $1 billion, over $1 billion to run her campaign. She had the White House backing her on this. She had, for the most part, the congressional leaders backing her on this. The media establishment in total, whether you want to talk about print or video, backing her on this. And she still lost. You need to process that loss, buddy, as opposed to lashing out at Jill Stein over it. Let's take a look at the article. He's making the point that Jill Stein, quote unquote, monetized people's pain and robbed people blind. You know what robbed people blind, Stephen? The idea that Hillary Clinton was in any way. Well, here's the thing. First, you make a point in the article. Well, let's look at the article. Jill Stein robbed you suckers blind, but Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party didn't. People spent over $200 million on the Bernie Sanders campaign, only to find out that the Democratic Party was cheating. The fix was in. The jig was up. It was rigged. Even if you want to go to the standard that Donna Brazile goes. That's called rigging an election. Those people spent over $200 million for an election where the fix was already in. And you're telling me shit about Jill Stein? Yeah, dude, you can kick rocks on this. Let's keep going. We all remember the crushing disappointment and mounting dread of election night 2016. But when it seemed like all hope was lost, Green Party President Jill Stein showed up to soothe us and monetize our pain. I don't know who us is. I don't know who us is. Are you talking about a bunch of Hillary Clinton supporters that were shattered on election night? Maybe. Maybe. But she wasn't there to monetize your pain, buddy. She was there to figure out who actually won those states. And you would think that if you were really interested in this, that your issue here would be more so the fact that there was a pain in the ass to try to even figure out who won those states. Meaning, in a recount, in a democratic system, you would think that a recount wouldn't necessarily be the hardest thing in the world to accomplish. But apparently it was. Why do you have to pay millions of dollars for a recount in the first place? If you believe that Hillary Clinton won those states, or at the very least, you would be curious to know whether or not she won those states, look like you would be on board for a recount. If Jill Stein came and said she wants to get a recount because she herself wants to know how many additional votes the Green Party may have gotten in this process, why wouldn't you be on board for that? At the end of the day, the goal is to figure out who won. For all the politics in the world, at the end of the day, the goal is to figure out who won. Just what Jill Stein was trying to do. I strongly suspect, your issue here is not with the recount. Your issue here is that your candidate lost. And that Jill Stein essentially saying, I'm going to do a recount. I need to raise money for this recount. And for whatever reason, in a democratic system, people have to actually raise money to figure out who won that election. That seems to be more of an issue. But no, the issue here for you is Jill Stein. So let's talk about Jill Stein. Jill Stein goes along the way and says, I'm going to try to raise it. Hillary Clinton tags on to it, but doesn't have the spine and the backbone or the nerve to actually say, okay, I'm going to put my weight behind this as Hillary Clinton to figure out who won. She didn't want to touch it. But you here, annoyed at Jill Stein trying to figure out who won the actual contest. Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate who only won 1% of the popular vote, right, she only won 1%, so why are we talking about her? Why are we talking about her? Is now attracting far more media attention than her campaign ever did, and she launched a controversial effort to initiate a recount proceedings in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, 3 states where Donald Trump beat the stuffing out of Hillary Clinton by roughly 1%. What on earth is controversial about trying to figure out who won your election? This is stupid on steroids. What is controversial, or what should be controversial? Are you in a democratic system or not? And in that democratic system, are you telling me that a vote is unchallenged? That people should not be able to look and figure out who won the election? And that one blockade after the next that's put up in that process from the standpoint of cash is okay? What I'm getting at is, Stephen, it shouldn't be controversial. If you want to know who won in your political process, you should be able to figure out as a public who won in the political process. What should shock your brain is, wait a minute, why is it controversial to figure out who actually won an election, and for the person, one of the people who were running in that election, to challenge it to figure out who won? To Stephen, this is controversial. How dare they look at the vote total? How dare they? How dare they? How dare they? They're bastard. She's trying to figure out who won in the process. And there's also something inherently wrong with some Hillbot angry at the democratic process. It's as if Stephen believes that nobody else should run in the race. And if Stephen would have actually looked at any research on this, he would have found out that Hillary Clinton would have lost worse if Jill Stein wasn't on the ballot. Those people who voted for Jill Stein wasn't going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Many of them would have went to Trump. Many of them would have just stayed home. Hillary Clinton would have lost worse. Stephen probably hadn't seen that particular research. But let's keep going. There's multiple problems with this. A, he doesn't know that Hillary Clinton would have lost worse. B, he doesn't know that the people who are in that race, in that 1%, would have just stayed home or not voted. But at the end of the day, Hillary Clinton wouldn't have gotten those votes. He doesn't quite understand that in the democratic process, the Green Party has no reason to help the Democratic Party get votes. I don't quite understand why he believes that, but for whatever reason, he does. He believes that. All of these things are problematic that a person is writing an article with these odd, erroneous beliefs. But let's keep going. He doesn't understand why people in the democratic system will want to know who won the election. Ever since she announced her efforts last week, Stein has been attacked from all sides as critics try to pin down her endgame. Trump himself called the campaign a Green Party scam to fill her coffers, while the Clinton campaign tepidly joined in the recount out of obligation. It was an obligation. If you believe that, you're an idiot. She didn't rejoin out of obligation. Hillary Clinton was looking for any way, by hook or by crook, to get the election. And if there was any way, any chance possible that she was going to get additional votes, she was looking for those additional votes. This is nonsense. If the campaign thought results would change based on the recount, we would have sought them. We didn't. Clinton lawyer Mark Elias told the Washington Post. Even states involved in the recount seemed unenthused and worried that Stein's efforts would cost taxpayers money. Think about what you're saying. I understand that. Think about what you're arguing here. Think about what you're arguing. Democracy. Democracy is not the problem. Your candidate lost. Your candidate lost. She failed. She failed miserably. She failed at an epic fucking level. Your candidate lost. The problem in this process about your candidate losing is not the democratic process. People who run in elections should be able to get recounts. That shouldn't be controversial. That shouldn't even be a big deal. It should just be a recount. If you're perfectly okay with the way things are, I don't quite understand why you have an issue with recounts and why you have an issue with Jill Stein seeking a recount. I know this particular one is not on the Jill Stein recount, but you're showing this as if it's an argument about something. So what? Jill Stein want a recount. This idea that the noble Hillary Clinton was signing on because she was twisted is stupid. It's stupid. John Kerry had gotten word that, for the most part, there were weirdness with the elections, and I think it was in Ohio. John Kerry didn't sign on to push the election system back. He didn't even challenge the election total. Al Gore didn't even challenge his own vote total, even though there were hundreds of thousands of African Americans that didn't get the vote in Florida because of the hijinks that took place. You had one African American of the Black Caucus after the next coming up to bat for Al Gore, and you couldn't get one Democratic senator to back it, nor will Al Gore himself back it. I don't want to hear this nonsense that if they thought XYZ would have taken place, they would have put more weight behind it. She just didn't have the spine or the backbone to do it. But Hillary Clinton, the vulture that she was looking for ways to try to overturn that election, going so far as to have her hillbots and Democrats saying that the cheating itself might, or the Russia influence, may give a pretext for some shenanigans to get Hillary Clinton in office. That woman would have taken this office by hook or by crook. She just didn't have anything on her side to do it. She signed on to the Jill Stein vote because she didn't necessarily want to get involved with this idea of maybe the American vote system is not quite right. She doesn't want to put her weight behind that, but by the same token, if something comes up where there's some shenanigans, she wants to be able to get further involved in it. It is comical that a person will look at this, a political actor as it is, and say, yeah, she's just doing this because her arm is twisted. It's amazing. It's amazing that people believe this. But I guess you believe whatever you have to believe when your candidate fails at that level. Dr. Flankenstein Gall here was unprecedented. The business model of her own presidential campaign resembled the plot of the producers, run the worst campaign in history with the worst candidate in history, fund the disaster with the hard-earned money of deluded suckers, and retire to Moscow. Oh, I thought he was talking about Clinton at first. Up until this point, I actually thought he was talking about Clinton. The business model from the producers' presidential campaign resembles the plot from the producers. Run the worst campaign in history, yeah. With the worst candidate in history, yeah. Fund the disaster with hard-earned money of deluded suckers. Yes, all of that is Hillary Clinton. Yes. Yes. Then retire to Moscow. Hillary Clinton didn't go to Moscow. But I feel you. I mean, after all, she lost. She had $1 billion. She had $1 billion. Those suckers gave her over $1 billion. They gave a candidate with a like-dislike ratio that had more people hating her than any other candidate in history with the exception of Donald Trump. By definition, that is the worst candidate in political history. And they gave that worst candidate in political history over $1 billion. There were people who told you that this was the worst candidate in political history. The woman had to cheat to get past the socialists. But you believe, even her own campaign, when you look at the book Shattered, Stephen should read the book Shattered, that talk about the emails. Are anybody concerned that it seems like the only person they could beat is Donald Trump? And she couldn't even do that. She couldn't even do that. Couldn't even beat a reality show host. So sad. And you have this guy giving a hate screed because his candidate lost. Well, at the very least, he's better than the Young Turks. Because he's not blaming voters. He's blaming another candidate who was in the race running against his candidate. Oh, you bastard! Running against my Hillary Clinton. But unlike Bialik, Biastock, and Bloom, who didn't successfully help make America great again, Stein all but handed the election to Donald Trump. Why show her face so soon when she likely had plenty of invitations to join Vladimir Putin at this week's karaoke? Maybe because the recount was where the true money was. That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm going to put this at the bottom for you guys to read for yourself. His issue here is that she got money from this, and apparently she stopped filing the, what is it called? Right here. Strange is a rather benign description for a cynical cash grab from Stein, who preyed upon desperate people, some of whom might have flushed their votes down the toilet for Stein because they thought their own states were safely blue. Stein actively helped Trump win. It's not just she bashed Clinton. She should have bashed Clinton. She's in a different party. But she argued for Trump repeatedly. No, she didn't. Claiming that the former reality star was less likely to get us into a nuclear war than former Secretary of State. Yes, that's true. That is true. He would be less likely, seeing as Hillary Clinton was talking about putting a missile defense shield in Syria. That was something she was advocating for. That's called a war. You understand? That's called a war. That's not Jill Stein saying she advocated. That's her advocating for reality. If you're not, at the very least, being honest about, yes, Hillary Clinton was advocating for putting a missile defense shield in Syria, and that would involve putting military troops in Syria. That's called a war. Jesus Christ. Talking about missing a functioning brainstem. This is very similar to what I told a jury in civil court about DLC. To be perfectly clear, we never really had any evidence of life restoration in deceased loved ones. The point we have always making is that you have to try. You have to check. You have to just accept the results of a complex autopsy, especially ones conducted in hospitals. You don't just trust, I'm a horrible human being. Okay, I have no idea what that means. Look, this article is, the premise of the article is somewhat absurd. The problem here is not democracy. The problem here is not representative government. The problem here is not that the person wanted to check the vote total at the end of the vote total. There is a problem that you're so naive to believe that Hillary Clinton just signed on to this just because Hillary Clinton was somehow arm twisted into doing this. That's stupid. That's nonsensical. I don't even know why you would think that. You would have to believe that the woman has this amazing level of integrity, which I don't know why anybody does, which also gets across this idea of your disposition here. She had over $1 billion. She had everything on her side. She failed to reality shows. I would say that your interrogations need to start there, not in a democratic process, not that this woman raised money in order to check the vote total. You understand that a lot of Hillbots gave her that cash. You can even make an argument that most Hillbots gave her that cash. And it's somewhat of a sad thing that you don't even realize that if Jill Stein wasn't in the race, that Hillary Clinton would have lost worse, because those Jill Stein voters would just not have showed up, or they would have went to Trump. So sad. So utterly pathetic. A Hillbot, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, flailing at Jill Stein. I'm going to leave this here. This one has went far, far longer than I wanted, but you up early, you good at this. Anthony Allen, thank you. Well, my wife is up early, and we're talking about going to the left forum, so I want to get these out the way now. So it's going to take like 6 hours to get there. All right, guys, I'm going to end this here. If you enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys.